Are you trying to build a ship like Titanic that can't sink? The only ship that can sink is actually your faith. Everything else, the material, and the things that we're striving for will inevitably sink or have the potential to. And the awareness that I have of this came to me after I yesterday watched a documentary on Netflix called Waking the Titanic. I've always, since I was a kid, been really fascinated by this Titanic story. And this specific documentary, it follows or it talks about 14 people from an Irish village who basically boarded the Titanic in hopes of starting new lives in America. And only three of those people actually arrived. They risked everything to sort of gain everything, right? Their hopes were in the material world on the other side of the world. And this was a big leap for these people. So I watched this documentary yesterday with my grandma who lived during these times or grew up during these times, and she shared with me basically how a lot of people also here in Norway made the same risks because the material circumstances in which they lived were so poor, and so they felt as if they had nothing to lose in taking the risk and sort of going on a ship, which might have taken them several months to actually get to America, right? But what came to my awareness, or what kind of sort of what I took away from watching this actually, what came to me was that, again, the only ship that can't sink is your faith. Because how did they market? How did they market the Titanic? They marketed it to people as if the ship could not sink. And so basically, what ended up happening was that people then put their entire faith in this ship and being able to deliver them to their destination. And how often don't we do that in our day to day lives and living in this world? We put our entire hopes and dreams and faith, or basically everything, into the material, into our dreams coming to fruition in the way that we want them to come to fruition. But the thing is that there's the only thing that really is worth cultivating that will last for eternity is your spiritual faith, the faith that you have within yourself, the way that you cultivate and take leap, cultivate your soul and take leaps. That is what can sustain beyond anything else. And so, very often, right, we're being told, take an education, do this, do that, by society, follow this script, follow this way of living. And it's as if we're sold this Titanic, as if, like, if you just do these things, you won't sink. It's as if we're being, like, given this template of how to live, right? And to some degree, yes, it can be helpful to live a decent life in this lifetime. But beyond that, there's so much more. And even when we put our faith in the material and in the hustle and in the grind and in the work and in sort of this illusion of the future, even when we or if we attain all these things, we might feel empty, we might feel unfulfilled. And this is something that I've observed, studying psychology and sort of through my own life as well, through my own life experience. And so I came to the conclusion, after having traveled around the world and seeing how people live and seeing what kind of ideals they have and where they put their hopes and dreams. And we're all guilty of this. We're all guilty of this. We put it in, we put our faith more in the material and in the money, in the things that we think will bring us happiness and joy, when in fact, across all the different places that I've been, that's really not the ultimate sort of end all be all. So that is really what came through for me when I watched this documentary. Be careful with what you put your faith in. And even when people around you or society or whomever it is, right, tells you that something cannot sink, that you won't sink if you follow this in this way, discern. Make sure that you have discernment. Make sure that you put your time and effort and energy into growing your soul and the connection that you have with God beyond anything else. And how do you grow your faith? You begin attuning sort of yourself to that silent little whisper, not the screaming voice in your mind of what you should do, what you have to do, and all these things, but instead come into alignment and again and again and again say yes to that silent little whisper, which is God. Okay? And this is how you build your faith, because faith comes up against challenges. That is how it's being shown, how faithful you actually are. It's not in how much you read the Bible. It's not in how much you go to church. It's not in what you do per se. It's more about how you apply the things that you actually become aware of in your life. So, are you trying to build a ship like Titanic that can't sink? Make sure that you check what it is that you put your hopes in, because everything can sink, right? Or has the potential to sink, except the soul of yours. That is the commitment that is the most important on anything else. And in the Bible, it actually says, set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. So basically, set your mind on that which is above, let's say, the Titanic, the sort of promise, right, of what can't sink. Set your mind above that, and basically make sure that you cultivate the spiritual self. So crucial. And one way to do this is to make sure that what you nourish your mind with and your heart with is of sort of the highest good for all. Also in Matthew 6, verse 19 to 21, it says that do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For there your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So ultimately, right, even though that you are being sold that Titanic is this perfect ship that cannot sink, that there's basically a security to be found in that promise, even there, even with that instance, and you remember what happened there, right? It hit an ice mountain in the ocean, and a lot of people passed away. And what was so interesting too about this whole story with the Titanic was that there was basically several levels to this sort of ship, with like first class, second class, third class. And I just found it to be such an interesting metaphor, right? Because basically on the top, the first class, I think there were like probably 8 or 18 lifeboats that were filled with just first class people. And these other classes, they were least likely to be able to make it to a lifeboat. And so, can you just imagine for a second? This is actually a real thing that we've got to put ourselves into thinking about. In such a disaster, what would you do? Would you give up your seat for someone else? Would you leave your husband or wife in order to get on a lifeboat? Would you basically, if you were first class, would you jump on that lifeboat, knowing that there were plenty of other people in other classes that couldn't jump on, right? Can you just imagine for a second how that must feel and how that must be? And here we are striving to go up, 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 up. But what we really ought to strive for is faith and the way that we're all being judged at one point in our lives when we meet the Lord, right? And we want to live like that. We want to live sacrificial. We want to live with love. And I think that this is such an interesting story with the Titanic of how actually um, we put our faith in the material and in the things that seem to promise us like eternal life, right? We put our faith in ships, in a material ship, as if it can sink. And interestingly and ironically enough, it did sink. And so you should question yourself where you put your faith. If you put your faith in something that other people are saying can sink, right? But inevitably it will sink. So this is really how it works, right? So just make sure to check yourself and check where you put your hopes, whether you put it in the material or whether you don't. Because what will persevere is how you show up across time and space, showing love for other people beyond yourself. Mhm. Set your minds on the things that are above, not on the things that are on earth, not even Titanic. Right? So that's what was coming through today. I hope that this added value and that those tuning in needed to hear this in some way, shape, or form. This is the only reason I'm really doing this. I have no idea who's listening, but you're listening for a reason. So yeah, have a think if this applies to you, and it absolutely does for everyone here on earth. Because I see how deceptive we are. We've come to such a point where we literally think that changing our gender, literally changing our gender, can give us eternal life, right? Like, it can actually give us happiness, right? We think that if we just do a material thing, if we just change in some way, shape, or form, that is where happiness is found. Or if we just move from here to there, that is where happiness is found. But it's never found in running away from ourselves. It's never a good idea to do that. Because there's a reason why we're in this body. There's a reason why we're here. We're put here. That's not to say that you're not allowed to think about these things or contemplate these things, because we have that potential, but making sure to check our motives and our ethics and morals is crucial. It really just comes down to not only self-love, but just connecting with that eternal love that we actually all have connection to. Yes. And if you'd like to connect more about this, feel free to send me a message or come into the Bloom Beyond community, or the garden, as I call it, where I talk about these things also. Talk more about these things and how to build your faith. And I really just look at the world, honestly. And I take whatever I take in, I contemplate on it, just like I did with this Netflix documentary, Waking the Titanic. And I was like, there's a massive metaphor here that we can actually, take a look on and begin to sort of see the actual message here. And for me, I think that it is not putting our faith in that which society or someone tells us can sing, but put our faith in the Lord. Yeah. Yes. So that's it for today. Have a good one, and I'll see you tomorrow.